The massive research vessel Cosmic Horizon drifted silently through the darkness of space. Its smooth, silver hull gleamed with soft blue lights that pulsed like a heartbeat against the endless black. Inside the ship's main research chamber, 3 scientists huddled around a holographic display that showed something very strange about the planet Earth. Captain Hyun-Ki Park stood with his arms crossed, his dark eyes fixed on the floating blue and green image. He had seen many planets during his long career, but Earth was different. Something about this small world didn't make sense. "Look at these readings," said Dr. Yoon-ji Kim, her finger tracing lines of data that danced across the holographic projection. Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of excitement underneath her professional tone. The hologram showed multiple archaeological sites spread across Earth's surface. Each location told a similar story, a story of sudden and complete destruction. Mesopotamia, the ancient civilization between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, showed signs of an advanced society that seemed to vanish overnight. The Maya civilization in Central America had cities filled with complex buildings and advanced astronomical knowledge. And then, nothing. Complete collapse. Jae-Sung Lee, the youngest researcher on the team, zoomed in on the data. "These patterns are impossible," he muttered. "It's like someone pressed a reset button on these entire civilizations." The Cosmic Horizon was part of the Galactic Historical Research Division, an organization dedicated to understanding the rise and fall of civilizations across the universe. They had studied hundreds of planets, but Earth was proving to be the most puzzling assignment any of them had ever encountered. Captain Park walked closer to the holographic display. His reflection showed a man in his late 40s, with sharp features and a military posture that suggested years of disciplined space exploration. "What do you think happened here?" he asked, not really expecting an answer. Dr. Kim adjusted her glasses, an old-fashioned accessory that she loved despite having access to advanced neural interfaces. "That's the problem," she replied. "We don't know. Every civilization on this planet shows the same pattern. Advanced technology, complex social structures, and then, complete disappearance." The hologram shifted, showing layers of geological data. Buried deep beneath the surface were strange energy signatures that didn't match any known technological pattern. These were not just random readings. They were deliberate, almost like a hidden message waiting to be decoded. Jae-Sung's fingers danced across a control panel, pulling up more detailed scans. "The quantum entanglement markers in these soil samples are off the charts," he said. "It's like something, or someone, was actively managing these civilizations." Outside the research chamber, the Cosmic Horizon continued its slow orbit around Earth. Massive sensor arrays extended from the ship's hull, collecting data with a precision that could detect the smallest changes in planetary composition. "We need more information," Captain Park said firmly. "Prepare a landing team. We're going to investigate these sites directly." Dr. Kim raised an eyebrow. "Direct planetary investigation is risky. The last time we did this, we lost an entire research team on the Kepler 452 bits mission." "This is different," the captain responded. "Earth is special. Something happened here that we don't understand, and I want to know what it is." Jae-Sung looked up from his data screens. "The energy readings suggest something was protecting these civilizations, not destroying them, but managing them, like a gardener carefully pruning plants." The room fell silent. The implications of his statement hung in the air like a heavy mist. What if the collapse of these civilizations wasn't a tragedy, but part of some larger, more complex plan? Captain Park's hand touched the holographic Earth, his fingers passing through the blue and green image. "We're going to find out," he said quietly. "Whatever secret this planet is hiding, we're going to uncover it." Little did they know, their journey was about to reveal something that would change everything they thought they knew about civilizations, survival, and the true nature of progress. The landing shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with a soft hum. Inside, Jae-Sung Lee checked his equipment for the 100th time. His hands moved quickly, but his eyes were distant, lost in thought about the strange data they had discovered in space. Dr. Eunji Kim sat across from him, her fingers running along a small device that looked like a cross between a tablet and a crystal. The device was designed to analyze geological and archaeological data in ways no previous technology could manage. "We're approaching the Atacama Desert site," announced the shuttle's computer in a calm voice. The landscape below was nothing but endless brown and red, a dry, empty place that looked like it could hide 1,000 secrets. Captain Hyun-Ki Park was reviewing the initial scan reports. Something didn't add up. The quantum markers they had seen from space were even stronger now that they were closer to the ground. It was as if the entire planet was whispering a complex message that nobody had been able to understand before. The shuttle landed softly, barely disturbing the ancient desert sand. Jae-sung was the first to step out, his protective suit creating a soft swishing sound with each movement. The heat was intense, but the suit regulated his body temperature perfectly. "Scanning for anomalies," he said, speaking into his communication device. Dr. Kim joined him, her scanner moving in slow, precise arcs across the landscape. At first, nothing seemed special about this patch of desert. It looked like countless other locations they had studied on other planets. Dry, empty, forgotten. But then something changed. Jae-sung's scanner began to beep. Not a loud alarm, but a soft, persistent sound that suggested something important had been found. "Doctor," he called, "I'm getting strange readings." Dr. Kim moved closer. Her scanner confirmed what Jae-sung had detected. Buried deep beneath the sand were energy signatures that didn't match any known natural or artificial pattern. They were complex, almost like a language waiting to be understood. "Captain," Dr. Kim spoke into her communication device, "we need to dig." Within an hour, they had set up a small excavation area. Robotic arms carefully moved layers of sand and rock, each movement controlled by precise computer algorithms. Captain Park watched from the shuttle, his eyes never leaving the live video feed. The first hint of something unusual came when the robotic arm hit a surface that wasn't rock or sand. It was smooth, almost glass-like, but harder than any material they had ever encountered. As more of the surface was revealed, it became clear that this was not a natural formation. "It's some kind of structure," Jae-sung said, his voice a mix of excitement and confusion. The object was large, easily the size of a small building. Its surface was covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change when looked at from different angles. It was as if the structure was alive, or at least responsive to something. Dr. Kim carefully approached the exposed surface. Her scanner was going crazy, collecting more data in seconds than most devices would in weeks. "These patterns," she muttered, "they're not random. They're a message." Captain Park's voice came through their communication devices. "What kind of message?" Before she could answer, the surface of the structure began to glow. Not with light as humans understood it, but with a kind of energy that seemed to pulse from within. The patterns became clearer, more defined. Jae-sung took a step back. "It's responding to us," he said, his voice a whisper. The structure was revealing something. Something that suggested the civilizations of Earth had not simply disappeared. They had been part of a much larger, more complex plan, a plan that had been hidden for thousands of years. Dr. Kim looked at Jae-sung, her eyes wide with the realization that they were about to uncover a secret that would change everything they knew about human history. "We're not alone in this discovery," she said quietly, "and we're definitely not seeing the whole picture." The desert around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. The structure pulsed with a soft, blue-green light that seemed to breathe. Jae-sung and Dr. Kim stood frozen, watching as the smooth surface began to change. What had looked like solid material now moved like liquid metal, forming patterns and shapes that made no sense to human understanding. "Don't touch anything," Captain Park's voice crackled through their communication devices, but it was too late. A thin line appeared in the surface of the structure, growing wider with each passing second. It was like watching a door open, but not in any way they had seen before. The line became a gap, then a pathway, inviting them to enter. Dr. Kim's scientific curiosity battled with her survival instinct. "The readings are incredible," she whispered to Jae-sung. "This isn't just a building. It's some kind of data storage system, unlike anything we've ever seen." Jae-sung's hands moved quickly, setting up protective scanning equipment. The sensors were designed to detect any potential threats, but they were picking up something strange. The structure wasn't just responding to their presence. It seemed to be expecting them. "It's almost like..." Jae-sung paused, searching for the right words, like it's been waiting for someone to find it. The interior of the structure was nothing like they expected. Instead of a dark, enclosed space, it opened into a massive chamber that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Walls that looked solid one moment became transparent the next, revealing layers of complex data streams that flowed like rivers of light. Dr. Kim took a careful step inside. Her protective suit was equipped with the most advanced recording technology in the galaxy, but she could already tell that no existing device would be able to fully capture what she was seeing. "Captain," she spoke into her communication device. "You need to see this." The chamber was filled with what looked like memory crystals, but these were unlike any technology they had encountered before. Each crystal seemed to be alive, pulsing with information that moved and changed constantly. Some were the size of a human hand, others as large as a small room. Jae-sung's scanner went wild. "These aren't just data storage devices," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "They're some kind of hybrid quantum organic system. It's like the memory is alive." A holographic display suddenly appeared in the center of the chamber. Images began to flow, rapid sequences of human civilizations from across history. The Maya, the Indus Valley, ancient Mesopotamia, civilizations from Africa and Asia that had been lost to time. But these weren't just historical records. They were something more. "It's a complete archive," Dr. Kim breathed. "But not just a record. It looks like a management system." The images showed civilizations at their peak, then sudden changes. Not destructions, but calculated interventions. A pandemic stopped before it could spread. A technological breakthrough redirected. A social structure modified to prevent collapse. Captain Park's voice came through again. "What are you seeing?" Before Dr. Kim could answer, one of the memory crystals detached itself and floated towards her. It moved like a living thing, spinning slowly in the air. Jae-sung took a step back, but Dr. Kim remained still. The crystal stopped directly in front of her. For a moment, nothing happened. Then it began to project a series of complex symbols and data patterns that seemed to dance in the air. "It's communicating," Jae-sung said, his voice a mix of fear and excitement. The symbols were unlike any language they had ever seen. Not just a method of communication, but a complex system of information transfer that seemed to carry multiple layers of meaning simultaneously. Dr. Kim realized they had found something extraordinary. This wasn't just a record of human history. It was a blueprint, a plan that had been in motion for thousands of years. "We're not just looking at history," she said quietly. "We're looking at a carefully managed evolution." The chamber around them continued to pulse, as if breathing, waiting, watching, ready to reveal more of its incredible secret. Captain Hyun-Ki Park entered the underground chamber with careful steps. The space looked different from the images transmitted by his team. Alive, almost breathing. Holographic data streams danced around him, showing glimpses of human history that made no sense at first glance. "Explain everything," he said to Dr. Yoon-ji Kim, who stood near a floating memory crystal. Dr. Kim took a deep breath. The crystal beside her continued to pulse with soft light, as if it was alive and listening. "It's not what we thought," she began. "Humans weren't just surviving. They were protecting." Jae-sung Lee brought up a series of holographic displays. Each one showed a different civilization. Maya, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Indus Valley, with complex timelines that looked like carefully managed ecosystems. Look at this, Jae-sung said, pointing to a series of data streams. Every time a civilization was about to face a total collapse, something intervened. Not from outside, but from within. The displays showed detailed scenarios. A pandemic that could have wiped out millions suddenly stopped. A climate change event that would have destroyed an entire society, carefully redirected. Technological developments that could have led to nuclear war, subtly altered to prevent total destruction. It's like they were gardeners, Dr. Kim explained. Pruning, protecting, guiding. Not destroying, but managing. Captain Park watched as an image of the Black Death pandemic appeared. The hologram showed how human interventions, which looked random at the time, had actually prevented the disease from becoming a total extinction event. Small actions, carefully placed medical knowledge, specific population movements. Jae-sung zoomed in on another display. The fall of the Roman Empire, he said. We always thought it was a sudden collapse. But look, it was a controlled breakdown. They were preventing a much bigger problem. The data showed how certain technological advancements were deliberately slowed, how specific knowledge was hidden or redirected, how populations were moved to prevent total destruction. But why? Captain Park asked. The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Dr. Kim touched one of the memory crystals. It responded by showing a massive, complex timeline that stretched thousands of years into the past and potentially thousands of years into the future. Protection, she said quietly. Not just of humans, but of potential, of possibility. Holographic displays began to show something even more shocking. Humans had been protecting not just themselves, but other developing civilizations. Subtle interventions on planets light years away. Careful management of species development. Jae-sung's hands moved quickly across his data panel. These aren't just records, he said. They're active management protocols. Humans have been playing a long game. The very, very long game. Captain Park watched as civilizations rose and fell, but not by chance. Each rise and fall was a carefully calculated move, like a complex chess game played across centuries. They weren't destroying civilizations, Dr. Kim said. They were testing them, preparing them. The final display showed something that made everyone in the room go silent. A massive, galaxy-wide network of potential. Civilizations as interconnected nodes. Humans as the careful managers of this network. We're not looking at history, Captain Park said slowly. We're looking at a plan. The memory crystal pulsed brighter, as if agreeing. Jae-sung looked up, his face a mix of shock and understanding. They'd been protecting something, he said. Something bigger than any single civilization. Something that requires careful, patient management. Dr. Kim nodded. The crystal beside her continued to glow, holding millions of years of carefully guarded secrets. Humanity's greatest secret was not that they could destroy. It was that they could protect. Carefully, patiently, across centuries and light years. The chamber around them remained silent, waiting for them to understand. The research team spent hours analyzing the complex data from the memory crystals. Each new discovery made less sense and more sense at the same time. Dr. Yoonji Kim sat at a holographic workstation, her fingers moving quickly through layers of information that seemed to shift and change like living things. This is impossible, she muttered, but her eyes told a different story. They were bright with excitement and something else, a growing understanding of something huge. Jae-sung Lee stood beside her, his face illuminated by the soft blue light of the data streams. Look at this pattern, he said, pointing to a series of historical events that seemed random at first glance. The intervention protocol was not what they expected. It wasn't about destroying civilizations. It was about carefully guiding them. Like a gardener who knows exactly when to prune, when to water, and when to let a plant grow on its own. Captain Hyun-ki Park watched the screens, his military training battling with the pure scientific wonder of what they were discovering. Each civilization they had studied, from the ancient Sumerians to the Maya, from the Chinese dynasties to forgotten African kingdoms, showed the same careful management. A pandemic about to wipe out a population. Subtle medical knowledge would appear, a technological breakthrough that could lead to total destruction. Key researchers would mysteriously change direction. A social structure about to collapse. Unexpected migrations would occur. It's not random, Dr. Kim said, her voice clear and strong. Every single intervention has a purpose. The memory crystals began to show more detailed information. They weren't just recording history, they were showing the reasoning behind each intervention. Complex decision trees that stretched across hundreds of years, showing how a single small change could prevent a massive disaster. Jae-sung zoomed in on one specific timeline. The fall of the Mayan civilization looked completely different now. What historians had called a collapse was actually a carefully managed relocation. Key knowledge was preserved. Specific genetic lines were protected. They were saving potential, he said quietly. Captain Park approached the holographic display. Explain that, he said. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Dr. Kim took a deep breath. Imagine a species as like a young child, she began. Sometimes, to protect that child, you need to remove them from a dangerous situation. Not destroy them, not hurt them, but move them. Protect their potential. The displays showed more. Entire populations moved. Technologies hidden. Knowledge carefully preserved in ways that looked like destruction from the outside. But why? Captain Park asked. The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. The memory crystals pulsed. A new set of data began to flow. It showed something bigger, much bigger. Civilizations weren't just being protected on Earth. The interventions extended to other planets, other star systems, a massive galaxy-wide network of careful management. Jae-sung's hands moved quickly across the data panels. This is impossible, he said, but his voice didn't sound like he believed that anymore. Dr. Kim found a key piece of information, a protocol buried deep in the memory crystals. It was a simple set of rules, but its implications were massive. 1. Protect potential. 2. Prevent total extinction. 3. Guide, but do not control. 4. Prepare for something bigger. They're preparing, she said quietly. But preparing for what? The memory crystals continued to pulse, waiting, watching, holding millions of years of carefully guarded secrets. Captain Park looked at his team. We need to know more, he said. The hunt for understanding had only just begun. Outside the chamber, the desert remained silent. Millions of years of hidden history waited to be understood. Humanity's greatest secret was about to be revealed. A secret that would change everything they knew about life, civilization, and their place in the universe. The communication link to the Galactic Research Headquarters crackled with tension. Jae-sung Lee's hands moved quickly over the control panel, preparing to transmit their incredible findings. Dr. Yeon-ji Kim stood beside him, her face a mix of excitement and worry. They're not going to believe this, she whispered. Captain Hyun-ki Park watched the data streams continue to flow from the memory crystals. Each new piece of information made their previous understanding of human history look like a child's drawing compared to a complex masterpiece. The evidence was clear now. Humans hadn't just been surviving. They had been carefully managing the evolution of not just their own species, but others across the galaxy. Jae-sung pulled up a series of holographic displays. Each one showed a different civilization at a critical moment of potential destruction. But instead of total collapse, each had been guided, redirected, preserved. Look at this, he said, pointing to a timeline of the Indus Valley civilization. What historians had believed was a sudden decline was actually a carefully managed relocation. Key technologies, important genetic lines, critical knowledge, all preserved. The same pattern repeated everywhere. The fall of the Roman Empire, the collapse of Mayan cities, the mysterious disappearance of advanced cultures across Earth and beyond. They were protecting potential, Dr. Kim explained, her voice steady. Not just human potential, galactic potential. Captain Park studied the data, His military background made him careful, skeptical, but the evidence was overwhelming. Humans had been playing a much larger game than anyone had ever imagined. The memory crystals began to show something even more shocking. Interventions weren't just happening on Earth. They were happening across multiple star systems. Civilizations that seemed to collapse were actually being carefully moved, protected. It's like a massive, galaxy-wide gardening project, Jae-sung said. The words sounded strange, but they were the best way to describe what they were seeing. A new set of data streams appeared, detailed records of interventions. Some went back millions of years. Others seemed to point toward a future that was still unfolding. Dr. Kim found a pattern, a set of rules that guided these interventions. 1. Preserve knowledge. 2. Protect genetic diversity. 3. Prevent total extinction. 4. Guide without direct control. They're preparing something, Captain Park said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The memory crystals pulsed in response, as if agreeing. Jae-sung brought up a galactic map. Dots of light showed civilizations that had been carefully managed. Some were human. Many were not. A complex network of potential. We're not the managers, Dr. Kim said quietly. We're part of the management. The implications were massive. Humans weren't just another species. They were something more. A species with a role far beyond what anyone had ever imagined. Captain Park looked at his team. We need to tell headquarters everything, he said. But they all knew the truth. Some secrets were too big to simply transmit in a report. The memory crystals continued to pulse, waiting, watching, holding millions of years of carefully guarded secrets. Outside the chamber, the desert remained silent. But something had changed. The universe felt different, bigger, more complex, full of potential. Jae-sung's communication panel lit up. Headquarters was waiting for their report. But how do you explain something that changes everything humans thought they knew about their place in the universe? Dr. Kim touched one of the memory crystals. It seemed to respond to her touch, showing glimpses of potential futures. Civilizations rising, knowledge spreading, a complex network of life and potential. We're not alone, she said quietly. And we're not just watching. We're part of something much, much bigger. The crystal pulsed, as if agreeing. The Galactic Historical Council chamber fell silent. Holographic displays showed the data from the Asterisk Cosmic Horizons Asterisk discovery, and no one knew quite what to say. Representatives from 100 different species stared at the information. Some looked shocked. Some looked scared. A few looked impressed. Captain Hyun-ki Park stood at the center of the massive circular chamber. Dr. Yoon-ji Kim and Jae-sung Lee sat behind him, their data tablets ready to answer any questions. Let me be clear, the Zorn representative said, its tentacle-like appendages moving nervously. You're telling us that humans have been secretly managing the development of civilizations across the galaxy. Captain Park nodded. Not just managing, he said. Protecting. The holographic displays showed a complex network of interventions. Civilizations that appeared to collapse were actually being carefully moved. Genetic lines preserved. Critical knowledge protected. Not just for humans, but for species across the galaxy. The crystalline delegate from the Proxima system leaned forward. Its glass-like body shifted colors as it processed the information. These intervention protocols, it said, they go back millions of years. Jae-sung brought up another display. It showed a timeline that stretched across millions of years. Interventions that looked random at first glance now appeared to be part of a massive, carefully planned strategy. We're not just talking about Earth, Dr. Kim explained. We're talking about a galaxy-wide network of protection. Different species began to argue. The Zorn representative looked angry. The crystalline delegate looked curious. The methane-breathing Krell delegation seemed more confused than anything else. Why? Asked the Krell representative, its translator making its voice sound mechanical and strange. Why would humans do this? Captain Park took a deep breath. Potential, he said simply. Every civilization has potential. Some need more help than others. The displays showed incredible details. A pandemic stopped here. A technological disaster prevented there. Entire populations moved to safer locations, not by force, but by careful, almost invisible intervention. Jae-sung pulled up a series of intervention records. "Look," he said. Each time, the goal was the same: preserve knowledge, protect diversity, prevent total extinction. The memory crystals they had brought from Earth began to pulse. They seemed to be part of the presentation, adding their own strange energy to the room. The crystalline delegates' colors changed again. "These are not just records," it said. "These are active management protocols." Dr. Kim nodded. "Humans aren't just observers," she explained. "They're caretakers, gardeners of potential." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species were angry. Some were scared. A few were impressed. The idea that humans had been secretly protecting galactic civilizations for millions of years was too big to easily understand. "We're not controlling," Captain Park said loudly, stopping the arguments. "We're protecting." There's a difference. The holographic displays showed more details. Subtle interventions, small changes that prevented massive problems. A technological breakthrough redirected. A social structure adjusted. A potential disaster avoided. The Zorn representatives. The news spread faster than light, faster than thought, faster than anyone could have imagined. Humans had been protecting civilizations across the galaxy for millions of years. On thousands of planets, different species processed this information in their own ways. Some were angry. Some were scared. Some were impressed. Most were confused. The Galactic Historical Council broke into chaos. Representatives from 100 different worlds argued, shouted, and tried to understand what this meant. "They've been watching us," the Zorn representative said, its tentacles twisting with anger, "guiding us, without our permission." Captain Hyun-Ki Park stood at the center of the storm. Behind him, Dr. Yoon-ji Kim and Jae-sung Lee watched carefully. They had brought the evidence. They knew what it meant. The memory crystals from Earth continued to pulse. They seemed alive, watching, waiting. Holographic displays showed the complex network of interventions. Civilizations that seemed to collapse were actually being carefully moved. Genetic lines preserved. Critical knowledge protected. Not just for humans, but for species across the galaxy. "It's not control," Dr. Kim said quietly, but her voice carried across the massive chamber. "It's protection." The crystalline delegate from the Proxima system changed colors rapidly. Its glass-like body reflected the changing emotions in the room. "Millions of years," it said. "How is this possible?" Jae-sung brought up another display. It showed interventions going back further than anyone had imagined. Small changes, careful moves, preventing total destruction. A pandemic stopped here. A technological disaster prevented there. Entire populations moved to safer locations, not by force, but by careful, almost invisible intervention. The Krell representative's mechanical translator buzzed. "Why?" it asked. The simple question hung in the air. Captain Park stepped forward. "Potential," he said simply. "Every civilization has potential. Some need more help than others." The room went silent. The memory crystals pulsed brighter, as if agreeing. Different species began to argue again. The Zorn looked angry. The crystalline looked curious. The Krell looked confused. But something had changed. The way they looked at humans was different now. "We're not controllers," Dr. Kim explained. "We're caretakers, gardeners of potential." The holographic displays showed more details, subtle interventions that prevented massive problems, a technological breakthrough redirected, a social structure adjusted, a potential disaster avoided. The Zorn representative's anger began to fade, replaced by something else. Understanding, respect. It was hard to tell. "How many civilizations?" someone asked. Jae-sung pulled up a new display. Thousands of dots appeared. Each one a civilization that had been carefully guided, protected. Not controlled, he said. Protected. The memory crystals continued to pulse. They seemed to be waiting, watching, holding millions of years of carefully guarded secrets. Outside the council chamber, the galaxy felt different. Larger, more complex, full of potential. The crystalline delegates' colors shifted again. "This changes everything," it said. Dr. Kim smiled. "That's the point," she replied. Captain Park looked at his team. They had started this journey looking for a simple historical explanation. Now they had discovered something much bigger. Humans weren't just another species. They were something more. The Galactic Historical Council continued to argue, but something had changed. The universe would never be the same again. "We're not done," Jae-sung whispered. And everyone in the room knew he was right. Millions of years of hidden history hung in the balance, waiting to be understood, waiting to be revealed. The memory crystals pulsed, watching, waiting, holding the greatest secret in galactic history. The Cosmic Horizon drifted near Earth, its massive hull reflecting the soft light of the planet below. Inside the main research chamber, Captain Hyun-Ki Park, Dr. Yoon-ji Kim, and Jae-sung Lee sat in silence. Everything had changed. The galaxy now knew humanity's secret, but something told them this was just the beginning. The memory crystals from the Atacama Desert continued to pulse. They weren't just records. They were alive, watching, waiting. "What happens now?" Jae-sung asked. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of millions of years of hidden history. Dr. Kim looked at the holographic displays that still showed the complex network of civilizations. Each dot represented a world, a potential, a future that had been carefully protected. "We keep protecting," she said simply. Captain Park nodded. His military training had prepared him for many things, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Humans weren't just another species in the galaxy. They were something more. Guardians, caretakers. The communication systems lit up. Messages from 100 different worlds. Some angry, some curious, some afraid. The Zorn representative's message came first. "Explain," it demanded. The crystalline delegate sent a more complex transmission. Its color-shifting language spoke of respect, of understanding. Jae-sung began to compile the responses. Each message told a different story, but they all asked the same question: why? The memory crystals pulsed again, as if they knew something nobody else did. "We're not done," Dr. Kim said quietly. The words felt important, larger than the moment. Outside the ship's windows, Earth looked peaceful, beautiful. Nobody would know by looking at it that this small planet had been the center of the most important secret in galactic history. Millions of years of careful management, millions of years of protection. Jae-sung found something in the memory crystals, a set of rules, a protocol that went beyond simple intervention. 1. Preserve potential. 2. Protect diversity. 3. Guide without controlling. 4. Prepare for something bigger. "What are we preparing for?" he asked. Nobody had an answer. The ship's computers began to process the massive amount of data they had collected. Each piece of information told a story. A civilization saved, a potential disaster prevented, a future protected. Captain Park looked at his team. They had started this journey looking for a simple historical explanation. Now they had discovered something much bigger. The galaxy would never be the same. More messages arrived. The Krell wanted to understand. The distant methane-breathing civilizations asked questions. Everyone wanted to know what humans had been doing all this time. Dr. Kim touched one of the memory crystals. It responded by showing glimpses of possible futures. Civilizations rising. Knowledge spreading. A complex network of life and potential. "We're not alone," she said. "And we're not just watching." The crystal pulsed. Agreement? Confirmation? It was hard to tell. Jae-sung continued to process the incoming messages. Each one told a different story, but they all circled around the same truth. Humans were more than they had ever imagined. Captain Park looked out the window. Earth seemed to glow, not with light, but with potential. What happens next? Jae-sung asked again. Dr. Kim smiled. We continue, she said. We protect. We prepare. The memory crystals pulsed, watching, waiting. The universe felt different now. Larger, more complex, full of potential. And somewhere, hidden in the vast darkness of space, something was waiting. Something that humans had been preparing for. For millions of years, the asterisk Cosmic Horizon asterisk continued its silent watch. Another chapter in the greatest story never told was about to begin.